Hey sharks, have I got a deal for you today? I'm here to sell you an ecosystem, and not just any ecosystem. I'm here to sell you the coral reef.
So tell me, why would I want a coral reef?
Why wouldn't you want a coral reef? There's just so much to it. You ever see Finding Nemo and you see the clownfish? It's an animal that's in the coral reef.
Now I'm interested. Keep talking.
Thank you, Mr. Wonderful. So, for an investment in something as big as a coral reef, you're going to want to know where the location is. And luckily for you, I can tell you exactly where it's going to be. Coral reefs are typically located in tropical regions near the equator. The largest and most famous coral reef, the Great Barrier Reef, is located near Australia. Other big popular locations of coral reefs are in Belize, Central America as a whole, Hawaii, and the Red Sea.
What a location! Tell me more.
Of course, I can tell you a little bit about these reefs. As I already mentioned, they're typically in tropical areas, but let's get to more details about the climate. The water is typically between 73 degrees Fahrenheit and 84 degrees Fahrenheit, but can go as low as 64 degrees or as high as 104 degrees for small periods of time. And the majority of these reefs are very salty, ranging from 32 grams of salt for 100 grams of 1,000 grams of water, or 42 grams of salt for 1,000 grams of water. In addition, the water has to be pretty clear so light can penetrate through it and allow some of the organisms to form photosynthesis, especially the algae. This also means that the ocean cannot be very deep. Typically, 165 feet is the range for a coral reef to be at. Coral reefs are extremely sensitive to pollution as it can mess up a whole bunch of things in the ecosystem.
Why does it need salt? Why does it need light? We need the details.
Well, for the water's temperature, it needs to be this warmish range because that's simply just the range it needs to be for coral and many of the other fish in this habitat to live. Same thing can be said with the salt. The coral needs a salinity to live, and this is why you will not see coral reefs in freshwater places. Now, the sunlight is because of a symbiotic relationship that the coral has with this algae called zooxanthal. This algae takes sunlight and converts it into energy much like any other plant. And they create oxygen for this coral through photosynthesis. And in return, the coral allows this zooxanthal to live inside it and give the algae a home.
Now, one question still lingers. What exactly is a coral reef?
Coral reefs are a beautiful ecosystem found underwater. They are composed of giant structures made out of skeletons of marine vertebrate called coral. The coral that forms these reefs are called hermotypic, or less scientifically known as just hard coral, as pictured up there. And they are called this hard coral because they take the calcium carbonate from the seawater and create this hard exoskeleton to protect their much softer inner bodies. There are also another type of coral known as soft coral, and they lack the exoskeleton and they just resemble a ravaged sea plant. A single coral is known as a pilop, and there are over 700 different species of soft and hard coral, and this coral helps support over 4,000 species of marine life that inhabit these coral reefs. In addition, scientists have only explored about 20% of the ocean floor, and there is so much yet to be explored, there could be much more yet to be discovered in the realm of coral reefs.
Is there anything else major about the environment of these coral reefs?
Well, coral reefs are not exactly the most common thing found in the ocean, and they make up only about 1% of the entire ocean floor, or 110,000 square miles, and that is only equal to the size of Nevada. Coral reefs also tend to be 5,000 to 10,000 years old. Coral reefs also breed a great biodiversity, as about 25% of all marine species rely on coral reefs for food, breeding, and shelter. And I'll get into specifics on these animals a bit later. There are four main categories of coral reefs. There are fringing reefs, as pictured in the top left, and these grow near coastlines and the most commonly sighted reef. There are barrier reefs, which is pictured in the bottom left, and these reefs are typically separated by coastlines or deep, wide lagoons. There are patch reefs, as pictured in the top right, and these grow between fringing reefs and barrier reefs on island platforms or continental shelves. Then you have these rings of coral that make up these coral reefs called atoll coral reefs, and these create protected lagoons in the middle of the ocean, and normally these form around an island that's sunk underwater, and that's pictured in the bottom right.
What kind of animals are in the reef? Who are the predators? Who are the prey?
So, with 25% of all marine life living in these coral reefs, it would be impossible for me to talk about every single animal. So I'll just go over some of the most interesting ones. One predator and prey would be the giant triton, which is a predator for the crown of thorns starfish. And so the giant triton is just basically this huge snail, as pictured in that first picture over there. And the crown of thorns starfish is pictured in the other two pictures. And basically, so the giant triton has gained a tolerance for the toxins in the crown of thorns starfish, and as such, it is able to be the predator for the crown of thorns starfish. And this is actually super important because the crown of thorns starfish eats, or just like gets its energy off of the hard coral, and if left unchecked, the crown of thorns starfish could kill up to 90% of the hard coral in any given coral reef, which is obviously not a good thing. So the giant triton keeps the crown of thorns starfish in check. And another just pretty cool example of predator and prey would be the tiger shark. And the tiger shark, through evolution, has allowed it to be highly aggressive and has extremely sharp teeth, making it a great predator. And one of its preys is the green sea turtle pictured there. And the green sea turtle does have like a hard shell, which is meant to protect it from lots of predators. However, the tiger shark's teeth are just so sharp, it goes through even that shell, which is pretty crazy to think about. And there's many others, as there's just so many animals in the coral reefs.
What kind of parasites are in these coral reefs?
So like any ecosystem, the coral reef will have its fair share of parasites. And one of them is being that pictured on the board, as it's pretty difficult to pronounce. And so this parasite is a camouflaging, coral-eating flatworm and could potentially be a threat to coral reefs globally, according to some UK researchers. And so the camouflage in this parasite is actually pretty interesting. So what it does is it eats some of the algae, the symbiotic algae with the coral, but instead of completely killing this algae, it keeps some of it alive and allows for the fluorescent parts of the algae to go throughout the parasite. And since the algae gives the coral its color, the algae is now giving the parasite the color of the coral. So it's allowing for it to just perfectly camouflage on top of the coral. This parasite also, we don't have any predators for it. There's no predator for this parasite. So this parasite really can just be out there. It doesn't have to worry about any predators or anything killing it. And just look like coral and just really just kill a lot of the coral reefs, and it's a scary epidemic.
Tell me more about this symbiotic relationship.
I've already went to a little bit of detail on the zooanthal and the coral relationship, but just for a little bit more detail on it. So the zooanthal and the coral are symbiotic organisms. They work together. And so what the zooanthal gets out of this is that as an algae, it has a place to live and it's protected by the coral. And then what the coral gets out of it is basically everything it needs to live. Right? The coral gets oxygen, glucose, glycerol, and amino acids, which mostly got from photosynthesis from the algae. The algae also provides the coral its color, as you can see there. So that's just a symbiotic relationship in the coral reef.
Okay, this sounds nice, but why do coral reefs need my money?
Why I care about the coral reefs, you ask? I have not just one, but thousands of answers. Coral reefs provide the nutrients for thousands of marine species. And as a human race, we're just really destroying these coral reefs, and millionaires and billionaires like you sharks could help donate some money and help us clean up these coral reefs and help us save these coral reefs and help us save every single one of those critters. Look how amazing those all are. And they're all dying because we're not treating the earth correctly, and the coral reefs are really also not being treated correctly. And so a huge problem with coral reefs is pollution, because pollution dirties the water up, and the water can't be dirty because the algae need the sunlight to create photosynthesis so they can give the coral, the glucose, the glycerol, the amino acids, the oxygen, like I just said. It needs that so it can survive, and so the coral can survive, and the coral can have color. And another thing we're doing to these coral reefs is we're creating global warming, so the water's getting warmer, and the water's getting warmer, which means the coral is now having to expel more of these algae, and when they expel the algae, it creates this process called bleaching. And bleaching just turns all the coral right. And as pictured here, see that's normal coral right there, colorful, beautiful. You got this bleach. This is a side-by-side example. And we're doing that too. We're creating the water warmer. And bleaching happens through colder water than normal. That's not common as warmer water. And as humans, we need to take a bigger part in protecting our coral reefs, protecting our globe, and protecting our ecosystems so we can just continue to have a great life on Earth.